I was standing outside my daughter's house, holding an envelope that could change her life. $21 million. I had won it 2 days earlier, and after a sleepless night and too much tea, I'd decided to surprise her. Not to give her everything. I wasn't foolish but enough to help. A college fund for Emily. Maybe fix their roof. A fresh start. A blessing. Then I heard the words that burned through me like acid. If we increase the dosage little by little, she said, she won't even know who she is by Christmas. I froze. My back pressed against the front porch wall as her voice drifted through the window, clear and unhurried. She's already mixing up names, Nora continued. Last week she called the microwave the mailbox. It's happening. We just need to speed it up. Then Ryan, her husband, added with a chuckle, she's halfway gone already. Once she starts forgetting where she lives, we'll have everything ready. My knees didn't buckle. They locked in place. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't knock. I walked back to my car and drove home in silence. No radio. No distractions. Just the envelope digging into my palm and a terrible calm spreading through my chest like winter frost. At home I didn't sit down. I moved like I was on autopilot. I opened my laptop and ordered 3 cameras. Hidden ones. I found a model with motion-activated recording and audio. Then I ordered a small safe. Not for the money. The ticket was already redeemed and sitting in my locked filing cabinet, but for the copy of my will, my deed, and now the pill bottle I would soon replace. That night I made tea and sat in the dark. Not to cry. To plan. They thought I was losing myself. They were about to meet the version of me I never wanted to be, the one that survives. The next day I cleaned the kitchen top to bottom. Made it spotless. Then I installed the cameras. One in the hallway near the front door. One tucked into the molding above the kitchen cabinets. One right behind the mirror in the bathroom, aimed at the medicine cabinet. Then I waited. They came that Thursday. Nora had her hair pulled back tight, like always when she wanted to look in control. Ryan brought flowers, something he'd never done before. They smelled fake. We just wanted to check in, Nora said, setting a casserole dish on the counter. How are you feeling, Mom? Ryan asked. You look tired. I smiled politely. Just a bit foggy today. Nora gave Ryan a look. He nodded and offered to help with dishes. That was new. While I rinsed plates, I watched the corner of my eye. Ryan reached into his coat pocket, slipped something into the medicine cabinet. He didn't say a word. That night I opened the cabinet. The new bottle looked identical to mine. Same label. Same dosage. But I counted the pills. Waited. Something was off. So I switched them. I put their bottle into a zip bag and tucked it into the bottom drawer under the sink. Then I began to forget things. Subtly. I called Emily by the neighbor's dog's name. I put canned beans in the fridge. I stared at the phone like I didn't know how to answer it. Nora started bringing forms. She spoke slowly, clearly, like she was trying to help a stranger at the DMV. Mom, these are just simple things. Power of attorney. Basic stuff. I smiled. Of course, sweetheart. Leave them with me. Then I did nothing. They came back 4 days later, more insistent. This one's for your health decisions, she said. So we can help if something happens. I asked her what day it was. Ryan's tone changed. She's worse, he muttered to Nora. We don't have time. Then Nora did it. She slapped me across the face. I didn't flinch. Ryan grabbed my arm and shoved me into the chair. My back hit the wood hard. And that's when the door burst open. Officer Grant stepped inside. Calm. Controlled. I knew her since she was 10. She looked at Nora. Step back. Now. Ryan raised his hands. Nora stepped away. Grant looked at me. Are you hurt? I nodded slowly. Nora's mouth opened, but Grant silenced her with a glance. Ma'am, please come with me. I stood. My cheek stung. My shoulder ached. But inside, I was steel. That night I didn't just review the footage. I backed it up. Labeled it. Stored it on 2 separate flash drives. After Officer Grant left and the door shut behind her, I didn't cry. I didn't even sit down. I walked straight to the kitchen sink, poured a glass of cold water, and stood there, letting the chill settle into my hand. My cheek still burned. My shoulder throbbed from where Ryan shoved me. But what stayed with me wasn't the pain. It was the calm. I wasn't afraid anymore. They had made their move. Now it was my turn. I retrieved the flash drive I had labeled Kitchen March 17th and slipped it into the envelope marked Copy 1. Then I pulled out the folder Nora had left behind, thinking I'd never read it. She had assumed I'd be too confused to bother. She was wrong. The first page was a long-term care request. It described me as disoriented, forgetful, incapable of making informed decisions. The second was worse. A property transfer request already partially filled in. They just left a blank line for my signature. I flipped the pages slowly, deliberately, writing small notes in the margins. I wasn't just going to stop them. I was going to uncover everything they tried to hide. The next day I called Martha. She had been my friend for over 30 years, sharp, patient, good at noticing the fine print most people skipped. She arrived with a yellow legal pad and her glasses dangling from a chain around her neck. She didn't ask questions. Just nodded when I said, "I need a second pair of eyes." We spent 2 hours going through every line of every form. Durable medical proxy, asset review, banking access. Then we found it, tucked between two less important sheets. A draft of a power of attorney document, already signed. With my name. My signature. But I had never signed it. Martha tapped her pen on the corner. "This isn't just unethical. This is criminal. They forged your name." I didn't respond. I just turned the page. We took pictures of everything. Printed duplicates. Created 3 folders. I wasn't going to lose sleep hoping someone believed me. I would have evidence. Paper. Video. Date stamped, filed, prepared. Then I logged into my bank account. Nora had helped me set up online banking years ago when I broke my wrist. She knew my passwords then. I thought I had changed them. Apparently I hadn't. The login history showed 3 recent attempts from an IP address linked to Ryan's office. I called the bank and requested a formal activity report. The manager on the phone was polite but cautious. I didn't expect him to care. I just needed the records. Later that day, I found something even more chilling. In the back of my old filing cabinet, inside a folder marked miscellaneous, was a typed medical evaluation dated 6 months earlier. It described me as inconsistent, withdrawn, unable to manage daily tasks. The notes listed behaviors I had never exhibited. It was signed by a doctor I'd never met. It had my birth date, my full name, and it had been notarized. I sat at the edge of my bed holding that paper, trying to feel something. Anger. Sadness. Anything. Instead, I felt clear. They had started this before I ever won the lottery. It wasn't about the money. Not at first. It was about control. Ownership. Erasing me on paper before I had the chance to resist in life. That evening I made 3 calls. First, to Officer Grant. I told her I had new documentation. She said she'd come by the next morning. Second, to Emily's school counselor. I left a message just to check in. I wanted to be sure my granddaughter was safe, that she wasn't being pulled into this, used as leverage. Third, to an attorney named David Kessler. He had handled my late husband's estate years ago. Trusted. Quiet. Efficient. I booked a consultation using my maiden name. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat at the kitchen table. Watched the footage from the camera above the medicine cabinet again. Ryan's hand reaching in. The bottle swap. Nora in the hallway pretending not to notice. And me sipping water playing along. I watched it twice, not because I needed to remember but to remind myself. I was right to act. By morning my shoulder pain had faded slightly. I got dressed, navy slacks, white blouse, the old pearl earrings my husband gave me on our last anniversary. I pinned up my hair and tucked the deed to the house and the lottery certificate into my handbag. David's office was small, tucked between a bookstore and a florist. When I walked in, he recognized me immediately. Didn't ask why I was there. Just led me into his office and shut the door. I placed the documents on the desk. Then I told him everything. The forged signatures. The fake medical reports. The pill swapping. The plan to declare me incompetent and take my home. He didn't interrupt. Didn't look shocked. Just nodded, took notes and said, "This changes everything." I told him what I wanted. Full revision of my will, removal of Nora's name from every document she had touched, restructured ownership of the house and accounts, I wanted protection not just from today but from anything they might try in the future. David started drafting the paperwork that afternoon. By evening, I had 3 signed copies of a new legal structure. I stored one in the safe, sent one to a remote P.O. box under an alias, and gave one to David for safekeeping. That night, I slept through the night for the first time in weeks. The morning after finalizing the legal changes, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea and my husband's old notebook. He used to call it his ledger of life. Simple black cover, yellowing pages. In it, he had once tracked every expense, every promise made, every plan built with quiet care. Now, I used it for something else. Every detail I remembered I wrote down. Dates, times, conversations, lies. I wasn't documenting for revenge. I was building a record. Something that would speak for me if one day I no longer could. At 9 on the dot, Officer Grant returned. No uniform this time, just a soft blue shirt and a slim folder tucked under her arm. She didn't knock. She tapped the door twice and stepped inside when I waved her in. I laid everything out on the kitchen table. 3 binders. Labeled flash drives. Printed screenshots of bank activity. Photos of the forged forms. And the fake medical evaluation. She said nothing for 5 full minutes. Just read. Checked dates. Compared signatures. Finally she looked up. "This is bigger than just a family matter," she said. "This could fall under elder fraud. Possibly identity tampering." I nodded. "I don't want to wait for it to happen again." "You won't have to," she said, and slid her card across the table. "I'll assign someone from financial crimes to start a review. Do you want to press charges?" "Not yet," I said. "I want them exposed first." She gave a small nod and took the evidence with her, promising to follow up within the week. Once she left, the house was quiet again. I sat there a while longer sipping tea gone cold. I didn't mind. I was still breathing, still in control. Later that afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I cooked. Salmon, asparagus, lemon zest on rice. The smell of garlic filled the kitchen. I set the table for one, lit the candle in the center just because, and poured a single glass of wine. I didn't eat quickly. I didn't watch TV. I didn't answer the phone. I sat in silence with every bite thinking. Nora and Ryan hadn't just wanted my money. They didn't want me, my voice, my name, my memories. They wanted a version of me they could manage. A silent one. One tucked away in a room somewhere forgotten. That was something I couldn't forgive. The next morning, I visited the retirement community on the far edge of town. Not because I needed to move, but because I needed to remember who I was fighting for. The place was quiet. Warm beige halls, large windows, a small cafe in the center with a fireplace and soft jazz playing from a speaker in the corner. I walked in unannounced and asked for a tour. The receptionist offered me coffee. I declined. Instead, I wandered the halls until I found the reading room. 3 women sat near the windows, each with a book in hand and a blanket across their knees. I asked if I could join them. They smiled, invited me in like I belonged. One of them, Evelyn, was from Michigan. She'd been a nurse. Another, Florence, used to play cello in a community orchestra. The third, Grace, had been a schoolteacher for 40 years. They spoke plainly about the lives they once had, the children who visited less and less, the quiet battles they didn't talk about to anyone else. I told them nothing about mine. I just listened. When I left, one of them handed me a small crocheted bookmark. "For next time," she said. "Books are good company." I smiled, thanked her, and walked out into the sunlight with something new in my chest. I wasn't just surviving this. I was learning how to win it. That night, I opened a new document on my laptop and began writing a letter. To the ethics committee of the firm where Nora once interned. To the oversight board at Ryan's office. To Adult Protective Services. Each letter was polite, concise, direct. No accusations. Just facts. Attached were flash drives, carefully labeled, showing edited clips of the pill switch, the slapping incident, and the forged documents. I didn't add emotion. Just dates, timestamps, and truth. On Friday morning, I mailed the packages by certified post, tracking included. I watched the clerk stamp each envelope with the kind of care usually reserved for passports. Then I walked out into the breeze and felt lighter. By the end of that week, I had also created a simple website. Nothing flashy. A single black page with white letters. When family fails you. Below the title, a 4-minute video. Security footage. No faces. Just outlines, voices slightly distorted. Subtitles describing what was happening. Quiet piano music underneath. No accusations. No names. Just moments. A hand reaching for a bottle. A slap across a cheek. A signature forged. I didn't list my name. I didn't need to. I left a business card with the website address at the country club where Nora had been trying to gain social traction. Left it with the event planner, said I was helping with a local awareness project. Then I walked out. No drama. Just intention. Back home, I organized my desk drawer. Filed every document into labeled sections. Set up a secondary hard drive for backups. Before I shut it, I added one last file, untitled, dated. A copy of my original will, now void. I read it one last time. Her name on every page. Then I deleted it. The packages I mailed were signed for within 2 days. The website went live that same weekend. By Monday, I received my first voicemail. Anonymous but firm. It was from someone at the engineering firm where Ryan worked. "We've opened an internal review," the voice said. "If you have further material, you may forward it securely." I didn't call back. I didn't need to. Everything they needed was already on the drive. Later that day, I received an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line: "We're sorry. Please call." I didn't open it. Nora was starting to feel the tremor. It wasn't panic yet, but it was coming. By Tuesday, I was already 5 steps ahead. David Kessler, my lawyer, had helped me draw up a new layer of legal insulation. A trust, a limited partnership, and a revocable clause that triggered automatically if anyone challenged the terms. It was a fortress disguised as paper. And inside it I placed everything. The house, the funds, the rest of the lottery earnings. But I wasn't done. I created a fallback plan. A second trust stored separately with a backup trustee unrelated by blood. Just in case. The documents were signed under my maiden name, notarized, and stored in a secure cloud account with dual authentication. Let them try to unravel it. Every string they pulled would tighten the knot. That Wednesday, I called a woman named Judith. We hadn't spoken in over a decade. She was a retired attorney who had specialized in elder protection. I didn't need her yet, but I would. We met for tea the following afternoon. I handed her a sealed envelope. "If anything happens to me unexpectedly," I told her, "you'll know what to do." She didn't ask questions. Just nodded and tucked it into her purse. That's why I trusted her. No drama. Just action. That Friday, I met with the foundation director at a local community center. I offered a donation under the name E. Dalton Legacy Fund, named for my grandmother. The donation came with one condition: that it be used specifically for housing and education assistance for women over 60 facing family displacement. The director's eyes welled up when I explained it. "You've just changed lives," she said. "I'm only beginning," I replied, because this wasn't just about me anymore. It was about every woman who'd ever been told she was too much, too slow, too old to understand. We weren't fragile. We were cornerstones. That weekend, I drove to the lakeside cottage I hadn't visited in years. My husband had loved it there. We used to spend quiet summers reading on the porch, playing cards and drinking coffee while the fog rolled in from the water. Now it was mine alone. I opened the shutters, aired out the rooms, cleaned every cabinet and reconnected the power. It felt like claiming territory again. I left behind a locked briefcase. Inside, another flash drive, a duplicate trust document, and a letter addressed to Emily. She wasn't part of their plan. She was the only one who looked at me like I still mattered. Even if I never gave her anything, I wanted her to know I saw her. Really saw her. On Sunday night, I returned home to find a voicemail from Nora. She sounded different. Not angry. Not confident. Just off. "Mom, I know you're upset. I think maybe we miscommunicated. If we could just talk." She was unraveling. Good. Because I was building. Monday morning, I got a knock on the door. It wasn't Nora. It was a man in a charcoal gray suit, short silver hair, sharp shoes. "Mrs. Becker?" he asked. "Yes." I represent a third party interested in your recent legal filings. May I come in? No, I said. But you can hand me what you've brought. He hesitated, then passed me a slim envelope. Inside was a letter, thinly veiled, polite but firm. A warning. It wasn't from Nora directly, but it had her fingerprints all over it. Legal posturing. Soft threats. I laughed. Out loud. The man flinched. I'll respond through my counsel, I said and closed the door. 2 hours later, David filed a cease and desist, citing unlawful interference and harassment. That was the last I heard from any third-party lawyers. Until Friday. This time it wasn't paper. It was Nora, on my front porch shaking mascara-smudged hands trembling. I didn't open the door, but I watched through the camera as she looked around, then sat on the top step, shoulders slumped. She stayed for 30 minutes, said nothing, then left. I didn't follow. The next week passed in silence. Nora didn't call again. Ryan didn't show up. No papers arrived. No voicemails. Just a long stretch of quiet. But I knew better than to trust it. Silence from people like them wasn't peace. It was planning. So I kept building. I contacted a cybersecurity firm and had them sweep my house for bugs, trackers, remote access. They found 2 devices, one in the hallway outlet, one disguised as a phone charger near my bed. I had never seen them before. They removed them, documented the serial numbers, and sent me a report. I handed the report to Officer Grant the next morning. Her face said what her words didn't. They were watching me. And now they knew I knew. That night I changed every password I had. Banking, email, phone carrier. I set up alerts for every login attempt, every device connection, every transaction over $50. Then I took my journal, sat by the window, and wrote down every small thing I could remember. Every time Nora offered to help with bills, every time Ryan insisted I didn't need to check the mail, every time they changed something for my own good. I filled 7 pages. When the sun came up, I was still writing. By then it was clear. They hadn't just started planning when I won the lottery. They had started months before. Maybe even a year. And now that I'd pulled the rug out from under them, they were recalculating. I didn't plan to wait. That day, I visited a financial crime specialist David had recommended. She reviewed my binders, my recordings, my signed statements. This is more than enough, she said. If they try anything else, we'll file immediately. I nodded. Thank you. But I don't want to wait until they try again. I want to prevent the attempt altogether. She leaned forward, impressed. How far are you willing to go? All the way, I said. I've already gone too far to stop. And I had. Because what started as protection was now strategy. They weren't just bad children. They were dangerous people. I had spent years wondering what I had done wrong as a mother. Had I been too soft? Too patient? Too trusting? But none of that mattered anymore. Because this wasn't a parenting problem. It was a threat. That weekend I rewrote my will again. Not just to change beneficiaries but to embed consequences. Any attempt to challenge the terms would automatically transfer all assets to a nonprofit. No appeal. No delay. David called it the nuclear clause. Called it justice. I also added a personal letter, short, firm, emotionless, to be read aloud at the time of my passing. It contained 3 words. You did this. Let them sit with that. On Sunday I visited Emily. Not at her house, not while Nora might be around, but at the park near the trail where I used to push her in a stroller. She was sitting on a bench reading, headphones in, a backpack at her feet. She looked up startled but smiled when she saw me. Grandma, she said softly. I've missed you, I replied. We walked a little. Didn't talk about Nora. Didn't mention Ryan. Just books. Classes. Dreams. Before we parted, I handed her a small envelope. Open it when you need it, I said. Inside was the contact information for Judith, and a copy of my original letter to Officer Grant. She didn't ask questions. Just hugged me. I love you, she whispered. I know, I said. I never doubted that. Later that day I got an alert. Someone had tried to access my online tax portal from an unknown location. I traced it to a device previously linked to Nora's office. I didn't flinch. I forwarded the alert to the financial crimes officer and made a note in my ledger. Strike attempted. Strike recorded. The next morning I received a certified letter in the mail. From a law office I didn't recognize. Inside was a single page stating that Nora and Ryan intended to contest the most recent estate changes due to emotional distress and suspected undue influence. I laughed. Out loud. There was no influence. Only evidence. I scanned the letter, attached it to my case file, and moved on. Because what they didn't know was that I had already sent every binder, every flash drive, every backup to 4 different places. My lawyer. My banker. Judith. And a remote safety deposit box in another state. They couldn't bury the truth. Not anymore. That afternoon, I sat in my garden with pruning shears and trimmed the roses. I hadn't touched them in weeks. They had grown wild, thorned, unruly. Beautiful in a way. Resilient. And I realized something. I wasn't trimming to make them neat. I was shaping them into something stronger. Just like myself. The final blow didn't come in the form of a fight. It came in silence. And paper. The investigation into Nora and Ryan's activities escalated after the unauthorized tax portal attempt. Officer Grant had passed the case to a higher jurisdiction. The Financial Crimes Division opened an official inquiry. Documents were reviewed. Access logs analyzed. Forensics checked the forged signatures. Everything matched what I'd been saying for months. The lawyer representing the state called me directly. "We'll be contacting you soon for a formal deposition," he said. "You've done most of our work already." I thanked him and hung up. Then I made one more call, to the local newspaper. Not for a headline. For an op-ed. I didn't write about Nora or Ryan by name. I didn't need to. I wrote about being invisible. About being doubted. About what it means to age in a world that treats memory loss like permission to be erased. It was published on a quiet Thursday afternoon. The next day, the country club coordinator called me. "We'd love to have you speak at our next event," she said. "Several of our members were moved by your words." I agreed, because it wasn't just about my story anymore. It was about the pattern. And the silence too many people carried alone. 2 days later, I received a letter from Emily. Handwritten. No email. No text. Just a letter. She said she read everything. The letter I gave her. The op-ed. The website. She apologized for not seeing it sooner. She said she wasn't sure how to fix what had been broken. But she wanted to start by learning how to protect herself, so she'd never become like them. I cried when I read it. Not because I was sad. Because I wasn't alone. The next week, Nora's firm dropped her from a community board. Ryan was placed on unpaid leave pending investigation. The Ethics Review Board contacted me to confirm certain details. I sent them everything they needed. Quietly. Efficiently. Without fanfare. That Friday I made one last change to my estate. I added Emily back in as a beneficiary but with conditions. She'd need to complete a financial literacy course. Volunteer 50 hours at the Women's Center. Write a letter of her own. I didn't want to give her money. I wanted to give her foundation. And a way forward. She called that night, voice trembling. "Grandma," she said, "why are you still being kind?" I smiled. "Because kindness isn't weakness," I told her. "It's strategy. It's legacy." We talked for an hour. About life. About trust. About what kind of people we choose to be when no one's watching. When we hung up, I sat in the quiet again. But it wasn't heavy anymore. It was peaceful. Earned. Later that month, Nora tried to contact me one final time. A letter. Full of tears on the page. No apologies. Just explanations. Excuses. Pain wrapped in self-pity. I didn't respond. Not because I was bitter. Because I was done. They had made their choices. And so had I. On the last day of the month, I hosted a dinner for 5 women from the reading room at the retirement center. Evelyn brought cornbread. Florence brought music. Grace brought photographs from her teaching years. We laughed. We cried. We didn't talk about loss. Not directly. But it lived between us in the warmth of the room. Softened by the sound of real voices. Real connection. Before they left, I handed each of them a card. Not business cards. Just 3 words on heavy paper. Still here. Still ours. And they understood. Because we were. No matter who tried to take our stories from us, erase our names from documents, or our value from the world we remained. I ended the evening with a toast. To every woman who ever got quieter so someone else could speak louder, I said. May we never do that again. The clink of glasses filled the kitchen. Soft, steady, strong. Later, after the dishes were washed and the last hug exchanged, I sat on the porch alone. The roses were blooming again. I looked at the sky, then down at the final page of my journal. There, in my own handwriting, was the last thing I needed to write. They thought I wouldn't notice. They thought I wouldn't fight. They forgot whose story this was. I closed the book, locked the door, and let the night hold me, not as a victim, not as a woman scorned, but as a survivor who rewrote her ending on her own terms.